basically plagiarized Rousseau. There's a reason why the final line of the Communist Manifesto, the workers have nothing to lose but their chains, apes the opening line of Rousseau, which is that man is born free and is everywhere in chains. They share a lot of those similarities, and this is why, and this is something we'll get onto later, that's why the communists are always nipping at the heels of the liberals, because fundamentally they share the same anthropology, that all underneath, we're fundamentally equal, we have the same fundamental natural rights, and it's civilization that is getting in the way of us realizing our egalitarian natures.
They got to have Matt McManus on. He would agree with some of these connections, right?
He totally would.
I agree. Man is born free, but there's
but that's not true. Though.
But well, it just depends on what you mean by free. And what I'm going to say is, when Marx says they have nothing to lose but their chains, what it means to be unchained is to be separated from society, the privileges, the benefits, and the responsibilities. To be born free of those things also means to be in a downward state where you will likely succumb to death. So the way I tried to explain it.
What the fuck is he talking about? That's not what Marx means at all. He's talking about being free from capitalist exploitation. He's not talking about being free from societal responsibility. It's just
I mean, maybe Tim's working his way up to some profound insight. Let's give him a minute.
Certainly outside of the confines of philosophical understanding and great writers, when I talk to my friends, because I'm like a teenager, I'm like, dude, why don't you go try living in the middle of the woods buck naked and see how you like it? Like, be free. Be free as you want to be. No support, no help, no making your clothes, no plastics, no computers.
Bro, I don't want to walk outside barefoot half the time.
And so what I would say to them, for a lot of my friends who are always complaining about something, I said, you need to understand that you live in this great privilege of society with roads, with protection, with police, all of these things. Go in the middle of the woods, buck naked, you're at zero. And without society, without family, without community, you are slowly going to die. And
you didn't build that
very quickly, I should say, slowly, but now.
Yeah, right.
Now imagine you're in the middle of the woods, completely buck naked, but you have a pointy stick. That is a step up from being totally nothing. To separate the workers from their chains is to say, go into the woods with absolutely nothing. That's your freedom.
Okay.
The chains are the social bonds that tie.
Awesome. So the first part of this, I mean, Jake, I mean, you just made exactly the right connection with the Elizabeth Warren and Barack Obama, like you didn't build it stuff that conservatives were apoplectic at the time, right? You know, that's like the first part of it is just like Tim explaining that we live in a society and that, you know, we're all interdependent and, you know, and, you know, you're fooling yourself if you think that you achieved whatever you have. Yeah, if you're self-made, right? Which is just sort of, well, whatever, very, very, very nice, solid leftist insight there, right? I approve. And then it takes a weird hard turn. Like, it's like, okay, I don't. And yeah, going back to it, so I wasn't paying enough attention earlier. So the thing they were saying was the Rousseau illusion in Marx. Was Marx saying workers have nothing to lose but their chains?
Yeah, and then there was just a hard cut into Tim talking about this. Like, I don't think that was like a continuation of the idea that the original idea was that Marxism equals Rousseau equals liberalism. They're the same shit.
And it's like, okay, I mean, the idea that there's some like shared intellectual or moral DNA between Marxism and classical liberalism is like, you know, correct as far as that goes. As you said, you know, Matt McManus would approve. That Marx was interested in Rousseau, that like, you know, there might be like allusions to Rousseau in various places in Marx. That's all fine. I think the claim that this particular thing is a Rousseau allusion is a little thin, right? I mean, it's like literally just based on the fact that the word chains is in both of them, right?
I mean, two chains, basically. What this guy's saying is that two chains ripped off Rousseau by referencing himself as two chains in his rap music.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think every sentence that uses the word chains is necessarily a reference to Rousseau saying that man is born free and everywhere in chains, right? I'm just doing literary criticism here. We haven't even got into the sort of content of what they're saying, but like, I think that's a stretch. But that's not all what's important here. So let's just take it as a given that, that Marx is like, Marx wants people to think of the Rousseau thing about people being born free and being everywhere in chains, when Marx says workers have nothing to lose but their chains. Just sure. For the sake of argument, let's just say that's true. Again, that does seem like a little bit of a logical leap to me, but fuck it, it's fine, right? Okay. All this stuff about how you didn't build it, also fine. But when Marx is talking about chains, he means social response, like being part of a society. And what? This is such a weird leap at the end here. Like, where are you getting this, Timothy? Yeah. I don't understand, how you're making this connection.
Yeah, I mean, when you put out your talk the other day of Marx deserves better critics, I mean, I think you mean even better than the bad critics that are better than Tim Pool. I think probably everyone who's mentioned in that article is better than Tim. Yeah. I think
maybe not James Lindsay, but he's the only one.
I think it came out. My sentence came out making sense. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think if you want to critique what Marx was saying, there's just so much room to have a real conversation about that, right? Does wage labor equal being in chains, equal slavery? Yeah, exploitation. Sure. There's and I think on the main show, there's an interesting discussion of how does social democracy fit into that, right? Where a lot of wage labor is has been well compensated at certain points, right? And still is that. Yeah. Those are interesting questions to me, where I want to hear Marx's answer to those, right? Because those are real, actual critiques. Yeah. But this is not even what Marx was talking. These are just the wrong type of chain.
No, well, it's all it's actually. It's hard to overstate how dumb this is, the very last part, because it's look, there is real stuff to be said about Rousseau's influence on Marx, right? Sure. This is, or certainly at least, again, Marx and Engels are interested in Rousseau. There are places where they talk about him, and there are certainly themes that are going to show up in Marx and Engels that are anticipated by things that Rousseau says. I don't know if you guys remember last year, I interviewed David Leigh Williams on the show, who wrote that book, The Greatest of All Plagues, how economic inequality shaped political thought from Plato to Marx, I think is the full title. And he's got a really interesting chapter on there about Rousseau, and Rousseau says inequality shouldn't be allowed to grow to the point where you have anybody who's desperate enough to sell themselves, or anybody would be able to buy them if they were, and that's it's not exactly the same maybe, but it's sort of, you can kind of see the point of connection there with the sort of later Marxist point about, labor exploitation. So I think there are real things to be said about Rousseau. I mean, there's a lot of differences too, right? But there are real things to be said about through lines between Rousseau and Marx. But the thing that makes this so astonishingly dumb is just okay, one, I'm just gonna go out and say this is not a deep insight. If there's one guy who knows that we live in a society, it's Karl Marx. Come on.
Tim Pool does too, from that being naked in the woods.
Yeah, I think Marx and Tim Pool would actually come to some agreement that living in a society is preferable to naked and afraid.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah, sure. And also though, the whole point, like Marx's whole point. I mean, this is that unheard article that just came out tonight. I'm reviewing the Bruno Leipold Citizen Marx, and he spends all this time in there on these debates between Marx, like in the 1840s, and these non-socialist radical Republicans, and the two camps in this debate like agreed on a lot of the sort of negative critique of the emerging capitalist system. Like they agreed on a lot of what was wrong with that system, but their solutions were very different. That a lot of these non-socialist radical Republicans wanted to go back to this sort of world of like small farmers and small artisans that thought, okay, maybe if there's like state land ownership and it could be like leased out to small farmers, we can have grants for artisans, we can kind of we can kind of go back, we can sort of reverse the transition from these like small farms and small workshops to these big factories, and we can sort of restore the Republican virtue of these independent small producers. And Marx thinks that's impossible. And Marx thinks that you can't turn back the wheel of history, because like there's no way of going back to a society of small scale production without that being like just such a catastrophe in terms of how much is being produced, and even the standards of living of the working class, that there's just no way a society would voluntarily regress that way. And this is the last couple chapters of Capital, right? Marx has just spent several chapters telling you about like the enclosures where English peasants were violently dispossessed from the land. And he says at the end, there's no going back, there's no turning back the wheel of history, but you can go forward to something better, right? Based on collective ownership. And one of the big themes of Marxist historical materialism is that what kind of form of social organization is possible depends on the sort of material level of development of the productive forces of society. That the exciting thing about capitalism, for all its horrors, is that it's built up this economic machine that's so productive that for the first time in human history, we could combine material abundance with economic equality, basically. And again, like, whatever you want to think about that, there are tons of like, obviously I'm on Team Marx there, but like, there are tons of like substantive criticisms you could make of all of that, right? And I think there's reasonable worries about a socialist state itself becoming oppressive, etc. All of that, right? But like the sort of most basic thing that like actually differentiates Marx from other 19th century critics of capitalism is that he doesn't sort of fetishize what came before it. That he's not, he doesn't even think we can go back to small workshops and small farms, never mind living naked in the woods without even like a sharp stick to kill animals with.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's most frustrating here is this is not even just bad critique; it's non sequitur. Basically, I think we're at the level of a basic almost a non sequitur, right? Or completely tangential, like free associative. Let's say it's a free associative critique. So anyway, let's see though.
Ties together. So when Rousseau says man is born free but ever isn't changed, what he's saying is man is an atomized individual who should be alone in the woods, but for some reason he's born into the civilization. But in reality, that's just not the case. You're born as the son of parents. You're born in a country. You're born in a community.
He's owning Rousseau
to a social network. You are not born free. Nobody is born free. And what good would freedom do to a baby anyway? It'd be the freedom to literally starve or freeze to death, right? It was
in a day, not even.
Not even a
like
day.
Rousseau and Marx's own children.
Well, one quick point too. Don't babies die if they don't get touch?
Yeah, human contact. This happened in Ceausescu's Romanian orphanages. Loads of kids died of neglect, not because they weren't fed or had water.
Let's not pause as long, but I don't really think that's what Rousseau is talking about, a baby who's just like put in the middle of the woods. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, listen, what I remember about Rousseau is probably like what I learned in like high school, but just hearing that quote, I mean, that's just not a reasonable, just like, that's not a charitable interpretation of that quote, I would say.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that, Rousseau in the Social Contract is arguing for governing society according to the general will of its members rather than like the, divine right of kings or whatever. But I don't, I mean, I guess, I don't know, maybe Rousseau changes. I mean, I'm not an expert. It's possible that after writing the Social Contract, he turned to like a less widely read in the 21st century book called, A Discourse on the Necessity of Leaving Babies Alone in the Woods. But I don't actually, I really don't think that's Rousseau's view. And it's also like, this is also just bizarre because it's like, isn't Tim Pool like, I mean, I don't know. Like I've seen him say any number of like quasi-libertarian things about economics. Like what? Like Tim Pool is just equating any sort of advocacy of freedom with thinking you could be totally isolated from all human connection. Like that. Well, that's the only thing Tim Pool thinks freedom can be.
Also, remember that Tim said that I agree that man is born free, and then Sargon said, no, that's not true. And then Tim seems to be now being like, oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I got that mixed up, actually.
Which is amazing because it's like, look, you can like say, like it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, no, so the previous Pope Leo was Leo the VIII, and so be like, oh, do you mean Leo the 13th? Yeah, sure, right. That's what I meant. Right? It's like. But like, if you're just like making this like huge philosophical claim, and then somebody contradicts you, and you're just immediately like, "Oh, okay." It's like, no, yeah, I do. Man's born free. No, it's not. You know what? You're right.
I also think "man is born free" is it's such a vague statement that you can't just have a philosophical discussion based on that. You got to be like, what do you mean by that? Right?
Yeah. I have to ask you mean follow-up questions here.
Do you mean free of charge? Like that? There's different definitions of the word free. Anyway, let's.
I mean, when you get a paper from a student, Ben, it says "man is born free" and just leaves it at that.
And then
you write red.
Yeah, no. Then Ben writes like "alone in the woods, survive?"
With question mark.
Yeah, question mark.
Like. It's like, dumbass. What would freedom even do for a baby?
That's literally what this so-called intellectual said.
Just because they have no adult contact.
Yeah. And as a somewhat aside, I wonder what causes that. I would surmise perhaps evolution.
It's obviously some sort of evolutionary necessity. But the point is, like everything about liberalism's presuppositions about what it is to be a human are just wrong.
What?
They're just wrong.
I think it's interesting because we see one of the highest rates of mortality is just after retirement. Babies that don't receive human contact also die. Humans as social creatures, I wonder if this is a component of evolution where if a society, if a person had aged to a point where they were no longer contributing, their survival would be a detriment to the remaining tribe who would have to do extra work to maintain something
just on his own fascinating aside.
And
right
a baby without touch is also it's like self-terminate essentially.
Deeply social creature and needs social contact, and we know this. We know this because what's the second worst punishment you can inflict on someone? Ostracism,
solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement. It is the worst thing you can do, other than simply hanging them. Right, and we know this. So we know that everything about liberalism being like, right, okay, well, actually, we used to live in the Garden of Eden, and we used to be on our own, and that's where things were perfect. That's not correct. And it's also not a desirable goal at all, because this
is that the goal of liberalism, to just return everything to the Garden of Eden.
Okay, so there's some hot anti-Bible takes going on in a Tim Pool show tonight. That the Garden of Eden was great. Well, that's not correct. But. So that's interesting in and of itself. I really just want to like, what was the title of this video on Rumble?
Give me a second. Jamie's pulling it up, but
Yeah, Jamie, pull that up.
Karl Marx plagiarized Rousseau's liberalism and created communism, says Connor Tomlinson.
Okay. So the only Marx thing so far is that he said something that used the word chains, which must mean that he was basically saying the same thing as Rousseau. And then, like, since then, we're like several minutes in, right? Since then, they're just talking about Rousseau.
Yeah, and their only evidence about what Rousseau thinks is greatly misconstruing one of his famous quotes.
Yeah.
So this is pretty low. I actually didn't expect it to be this bad. I have to be honest.
I think Tim Pool's discussing the 1764 book, Letters from a Mountain. I think he kind of misremembered what happens in the book, but yeah.
I don't know, guys. Do we want to take bets about whether Tim Pool read Letters from Mountain? But I guess okay, and everything they said about Rousseau is just based on like what they're speculating that he might have meant by that sentence, with no attempt at checking that against well, what conclusions did Rousseau actually draw about how society should work? Because there are a bunch of them. It's not that hard to find out, right? It's, and again, I mean, Rousseau seemed to believe that human society should continue to exist. I mean, that's that, even adults shouldn't go off and live in the woods on their own, never mind babies.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, just the basics of Rousseau, social contract theory, right? It seems like it's actually completely predicated on the idea that you live in a society where you make an implicit contract to get certain benefits, right, of living in a society and give up some sort of freedom. Anyway, I don't know.
No, exactly. It just seems like he's it seems like he clearly thinks that living in a society is good. I mean, he wants to kind of reform how those societies are, right? But in a more democratic direction, whatever, and more egalitarian, and in fact, he's probably much less concerned with material abundance than Marx is, but it just, Rousseau clearly wants human society to continue to exist, right? This is again, all of this has just been based on these guys hearing the sentence, man is born free, but everywhere in chains, and just leapfrogging to the most bizarrely uncharitable possible way of reading what somebody might mean by that sentence, right? As opposed to just meaning we're all born with certain innate rights. Right, that would be one thing that man is born free might be used to mean, right? But they're just assuming the only thing that could possibly mean is man is born free from any connection to other human beings.
Yeah, and guys, I mean, it's okay not to know everything, or like you said, even to get Roman numerals wrong, like I did earlier on the show. But you can be corrected, or when I'm right now I'm Googling Rousseau, I'm like, oh yeah, social contract theory. Life, there's a lot that goes on in life. You don't know everything, but you don't have to just confidently spout, like you do.
I actually feel the sort of level of intellectual discourse that goes on in the Joe Rogan show is way better than this, because at least at this point in the conversation, Joe would have said, "Is that what Rousseau meant?" Jamie, look that up.
All right, let's see where he goes with this.
And this is why the mythology of liberalism is the poison that is the problem. The constant liberation from contingency. Everything you should have all the time, whenever you feel like it, regardless of what anyone else thinks. That's actually terrible.
I agree, and I would say. The way you've explained not being born free, I would completely agree as well, right? You are born into a
he's on
country
board
of
now.
laws, and their responsibilities to you, and you reach a certain age, you then have responsibilities back. Those chains of society have
100%.
always been there.
Yeah.
Unless
Oh, the way you're explaining Roman numerals now, where you're with the X meaning 10. Yeah, now I'm 100% on board. X123 is 13. I completely understand.
You must have been very confused when Fast X came out.
Yeah, I was like, why are they doing 5 again? It doesn't make any sense.
This is. I mean, you remember The Simpsons? There's the episode where they go to Shelbyville, and Bart has to figure out what the number, like the Roman numerals on the doors are, because like it says like it said like the tiger is behind the 5th door or whatever, and like he has to figure out which one it is with the Roman numerals, and the way he does it is by remembering the names of Rocky movies.
I should have done that. This is, for the record, I do know the V and the X, but when trying to cram a bunch of information about a papal encyclical from 1891.
No, you did good. Roman numerals aside. Okay.
Should we see?
All right. Yeah.
Maybe just one more point, and then maybe we can.
Sure.
Actually, that's kind of a good idea. I'm gonna 1.25 them.
Unless you were born in the middle of the woods and your mom ran away, and then you got eaten by wolves.
Yeah.
I believe it's St. Augustine who said it's not that we're born free and equal, it's that we're born in urine and excrement. In the sense, we're born inextricably contingent on everyone around us who is compelled to make sacrifices to take care of us. This is why when you had Katie Faust on your show a while ago with my good friend Jeff Younger, she said civilization is healthiest when everything is reoriented around caring for those who get the absolute least say into the position that they are born in, because they cannot consent to the parents that they choose. They can't choose their parents. Therefore, the parents must act as if they could have chosen, and they would have chosen them.
I maybe a simpler way. I suppose society it grows great when it is built around caring for children.
Yeah,
and we are now here in the United States, and to what degree in the UK or Europe, I'm not. You guys can answer that one, but we are society for the elderly now.
Yeah.
I mean, what is he doing? The veil of ignorance right now?
Well, it sort of sounded like Sargon was. That's Sargon, right? By the way,
that wasn't Sargon. That was the other guy who was saying that.
Yeah. There's 2 British guys. It's very confusing. It's
okay.
Yes, he was saying like to take care of the weakest person.
Well, yeah, this is the level of expertise that I'm coming into this with. I actually literally don't know which of the British guys on the show right now is Sargon.
The one that actually sounds more cogent is not Sargon.
Okay.
Like I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says, but like he's actually making a good argument about things.
But he's making a good argument for the opposite of the side he's purportedly backs.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm also
Connor Tomlinson is his name.
Okay, so Tomlinson was the one who was kind of doing the Rawls veil of ignorance thing just for children. And
kids
like,
only.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Yes, I certainly agree. I mean, I did the whole opening argument about this a couple of weeks ago. Like, I certainly agree that, as a society, we do shamefully little to support, childcare and all of that, right? But I'm also confused about the other half. That's like that we're a society that's oriented around helping the elderly. I mean, really? Like we have you think American society. I mean, I don't know. You think about like all those people who lost their retirement savings in 2008, and like the obscene prices that American seniors have to pay for prescription drugs. I don't know. I don't think American society is doing that much to help out the elderly.
No, and I mean, other than that, which I don't know where I would place that on the political spectrum. I think I would just place it on not factual on the spectrum. But everything else, actually, that they've been saying, other than when they state their actual views, to me would support liberalism. Right?
Yeah.
The idea that a child doesn't, choose to be born into poverty, for example, right? So how is it moral to let that child's parents, continue without the funds, even if you think they deserve it? The baby's innocent, right? Which is their point.
Right.
So it doesn't really make that much sense. Interesting is that one thing apparently that the Pope Leo XIII was kind of buying into was the difference between the deserving and the undeserving poor, which is kind of a split that exists to this day, right? But I think the definitions of those might have been a little bit the opposite of what I would expect, which is not deserving of your status, but like whether you're deserving of help from like the government, right? Like basically, are you just like a booze hound absentee father, or are you like disabled, right? Those are the difference. But like, I think, children, and you would think the elderly, although he's saying fuck old people, but they represent.
We're already doing way too much for them.
Right. But children, they represent a really interesting. They kind of break those patterns, right? Because no matter what, if the parents are deserving or undeserving, right, the child is innocent, right? So I don't know. It just to me,
literally, just to put a bow on the point about the elderly. I mean, like, Social Security is literally a government program that we have a cap on how much rich people have to pay into. Right, like that we have. We're like, okay, so we're going to do progressive taxation up to a point. It's like, guys, we're not going to, just because you have $1 billion doesn't mean that we're going to ask you to like pay more for the old people. I mean, come on. So yeah, that seems very, very strange to me still. But yes, you would think that this Rawlsian point about children would mean, so we shouldn't have any children in poverty. I mean, even if your dad is the undeserving booze hound, right? I mean, it should still, have more, financial support to raise you. And, my God, I mean, once we really like start taking seriously that point about how people don't choose what they're born as, I mean, then like that really opens up the floodgates. I mean, people don't choose what, race or sexuality or national origin or blah, blah, blah. So you'd think like everybody on this show, this panel that we're looking at, I'm sure is in favor of like really robust anti-discrimination protections for, marginalized groups.
You don't choose what country you're born in, so you should be able to immigrate, right, to whatever country suits your fancy. Like you should take like the equivalent of like an MBTI test, right, and be like, this is what country. I mean, I guess I actually believe.
I mean, look, ideally, yeah, right. I mean, like, I think in the in the sort of like in like a very long runway, in a sort of fully automated luxury communist world, like I actually do think that's probably how things should work. Right? Like,
yeah, you can live wherever the fuck you want. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It does seem to be very, very selective on their part. Like this is just for kids, right? And this is just like, also notice that they didn't even say because kids can't choose who their parents are, therefore we should have like free daycare, or, we should have like, financial assistance. We should have like paid family leave, right? Like they just said, therefore, like as a parent, you should act on this, right? So it's still just all about like, exhorting individuals to do better.
Yeah, I agree with Coconut in the Corner commentator. I mean, it should be illegal. Well, I think it should be illegal to put your newborn baby in the woods. I don't know what you guys think.
Absolutely. Or at the very least, you should leave them with a pointy stick so they can fend for themselves after you do.
I don't know. As the parent in the room, sometimes you do want to leave them in the woods.
Yeah, maybe like we call it camp, maybe, right? But all right. Do we want?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there are other adults there. I mean, I mean, look.
That's true.
I mean, I understand that can go wrong. I've seen every Friday the 13th movie, but But yes, ideally, the idea is that you've hired other adults to look after your children and make sure they
Sure,
don't
not a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to leave.
Yeah, like baby newborns are too young to be sent to summer camp. I think.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. No, it's amazing. I just I've been rewatching How I Met Your Mother for the first time in many years, and I just watched an episode where there's a flashback about how Robin's dad in Canada, when she was a teenager, dropped her off in a helicopter in the woods to toughen her up by having to fend for herself for 3 days.
These guys are very against that, but I don't know. I mean, as a liberal, I think, listen, you were born free, and
look, all of this is just gravy. Like, you were born free of any social support, so this is like if we're feeding the kids at all, right? Like, that's they shouldn't feel entitled to it.